The implication being that divine determinism downgrades God from maximal greatness to a deity of deception. Accordingly, divine determinism is worse off than naturalistic determinism. Does divine determinism face the same difficulty as does naturalistic determinism? C.S. Lewis anticipates the following response to his argument against naturalism. Couldn't I be merely a natural being whose reasoning is really God performing reasoning through me, similar to how an electric current passes through a wire? Lewis responds as follows, quote, "The traditional doctrine that I am a creature to whom God has given reason, but who is distinct from God, seems to me much more philosophical than the theory that what appears to be my thinking is only God's thinking through me. On the latter view, it is very difficult to explain what happens when I think correctly but reach a false conclusion because I have been misinformed about the facts. Why God, who presumably knows the real facts, should be at the pains to think one of his perfectly rational thoughts through a mind in which it is bound to produce error, I do not understand," end quote. Lewis's response applies to divine determinism, the view that every event or state of affairs that is apart from God is determined by God. Divine determinism implies, of course, that God exhaustively determines our reasoning processes and correct and incorrect rational judgments and true and false beliefs and pure and wicked thoughts. As Paul Helm put it, quote, "Not only is every atom and molecule, every thought and desire kept in being by God, but every twist and turn of each of these is under the direct control of God. He has not, as far as we know, delegated that control to anyone else," end quote. Likewise, John Frame declares that, quote, "God brings about our free decisions. He does not foreordain merely what happens to us, but also what we choose to do. And this implies that God does, in fact, bring about the sinful behavior of human beings," end quote. Or as Heath White puts it, quote, "1, the facts about God's will wholly determine every other contingent fact, and 2, the facts about God's will explain every other contingent fact," end quote. So unlike naturalistic determinism, divine determinism fully explains and necessitates all of our thoughts, actions, beliefs, and behaviors in terms of God's inescapable sovereign will. But there are many issues with this type of response. If divine determinism were true, then it would have been God who determined the rebellion of his creatures in the first place. Indeed, the very concept of rebellion seems evacuated of its meaning on determinism. What does it even mean for a thing determined to act a particular way to be in rebellion? Isn't it acting exactly as it was caused to? Is this consistent with God's all-loving, all-good, and all-wise nature? To our knowledge, divine determinists have failed to produce satisfactory answers to these questions, and intuitively, we cannot see how God would do this, how he would deterministically cause such evil and irrationality in the actual world simply to teach us a lesson, especially since he could simply impart this lesson inside of us without unleashing pain and evil into the actual world. Therefore, we believe that the second option is unavailable to the divine determinist. The implication being that divine determinism downgrades God from maximal greatness to a deity of deception. Accordingly, divine determinism is worse off than naturalistic determinism, since the former faces both, 1, the issue of undercutting our trust in the reliability of our reasoning processes, and 2, the issue of implicitly leading to an understanding of God as a deity of deception.